I am now very happy to introduce our next Provocation speaker, Yvonne Ntiamoah. She's head of the Fashion and Design Department at Radford University, Accra, which she established as one of the first fashion programs in Africa. Yvonne is an education consultant and the chairperson of the board of Fashion Ghana. She's a PhD researcher in the area of contextualized curriculum and pedagogy in fashion design in Africa. Hello, Yvonne.
Hello, hi everyone. So happy to join you. So this afternoon I'd like to share some of my thoughts and findings within my research of contextualized design, curriculum and pedagogy in Ghana, contributing to a decolonialized curriculum in fashion education. So I think therefore I am is at odds with an African saying and proverb that attributes to Ubuntu, which means I am because we are. COVID has highlighted brilliantly the meaning behind this saying, that none of us are safe until we are all safe. And in terms of fashion and fashion education and fashion pedagogy, decolonization and diversity have contributed so much to fashion education. And until we unravel and solve this puzzle, we'll always be at odds with what's happening in terms of fashion education and contextualization. So my voyage to Ghana started in 2011 at Radford as the head of the fashion department. And here I recognized that the gaps within the fashion pedagogy. I am now a creative educational consultant trying to establish a new creative design college for JACCD Design Institute Africa, which again is based in Accra. And what both these experiences have taught me is that the exported curriculum from the West is at odds with the context of a place like Ghana. So the aperture that I have found in the curriculum and the model of education that's exported from the West determined my PhD research and set me off on another voyage of finding how and when we can use a contextualized model that will support students and also build upon this heritage of education that's adopted from colonialism, and how fashion education now is exported all over the world by Western education institutes as a business, and is greatly impacting on students' grading, final grades, and how the differences between home students and international students, what the grading gaps mean, and what a contextualized model of education can mean to the grading gap. So just to give you a quick backdrop of the fashion education in Ghana, as Essel brilliantly explores, fashion education in Ghana preconcedes colonial interventions, and it was built on apprenticeships and vocational practices. So more like a heritage of custom where education was passed down from generation to generation, and it didn't have the formal teaching or backdrop as we have in fashion education today, but indeed it was more craftsmanship techniques that were used as we find in vocational and polytechnic type practices of today. Before arriving at the conclusion of a contextual model that I thought was needed in education, I examined quite a lot of the students and looked at a lot of the students' work and why we were always at odds with the curriculum, or I was always at odds with the curriculum, and I thought that something needed to be done. I think Alexandra Ntiamoah is a brilliant example of this, where she's from a Japanese heritage and a Ghanaian heritage, and she loves both cultures and heritage, and she loves to express herself through this. But she found this journey when she joined the degree program, and it was through this journey that I realized that the gap that's existing for people like Alexandra, as she brilliantly puts here, that being free is accepting who you are and loving of who you are as a human being, despite all the odds and your cultures and your beliefs. And Alexandra's journey has led her to her design style, her brand, and who she is and what she does today as a designer. So fashion pedagogy, how can we contextualize fashion pedagogy to support our students today and bridge this grading gap between home and international students? The business of fashion, as I mentioned earlier, is growing in terms of growing at home in Britain and also internationally. So BA tuitions costing an average of 18,000 a year, and MA an average of 23,000 a year in Britain. Not to mention, a lot of the institutions are now branching out internationally and setting other branches internationally to encourage more students onto their programs. So although this practice is growing, there is still the big question of the curriculum that we are importing and exporting to these countries. Is it fit for purpose? And are the students getting the education that they deserve? Again, some other examples of students and students' journeys. We've got Stephen French, who is now on the Gucci program in Rome. And I'll explain more about Stephen's journey in a little while. And Papa Opong, who is now in New York, and he's just completed a master's at FIT. Both students, again, have gone through a journey of self-discovery. When the students first start the course, they are always at odds with who they are, what the curriculum can contribute to them, and them also finding their own styles and their own journeys through their work. And for two male students, joining a fashion education system in Ghana is both at odds with the culture of male students joining a creative degree program, and also in terms of them finding their styles and their personality. You've got the Western and the African education, which are both at odds with each other in terms of the African education through craftsmanship, apprenticeship, as mentioned earlier, and the Western education very much focused on theory before practice. So again, some images of students. It's always good to have a recollection of the students as they start the program, and then and plan and map their journeys and document their journey, the programs, because what I have found is that the people that they are when they start is very much enforced on them by culture and their environment, and who these students become by the end of the program, I truly believe is who they truly want to be and who they inspire to be. So a backdrop from Ghana. Ghana got its independence from Kwame Nkrumah in 1957, and he's the first president from Ghana. And I truly believe this is where the questions of decolonization starts from, and he spearheaded trying to decolonize not only the curriculum, but decolonizing many of the institutes that we now have in Ghana. So the textiles and fashion industry in Ghana stems from printing textiles and is hugely popularized by what we now know as Velisco, the Dutch company that was established in Ghana in 1846 and used more as a cash crop to sell to the West African nations to gain to create an economy to gain income. Again, people like Stephen adopt the print and the heritage of the printed textiles and have gone on this journey of their cultures, their traditions, and trying to fuse within that what they see around them and what we know as Western education. And how can this exist within fashion education using models like outcome-based education and constructive alignment as described by Davis in his theory of education. So outcome-based education, which explores conception, outcome. Again, within this outcome-based education, we have approaches that can lead to what I believe a more exploratory way of learning, but having to document and have the students actually having to have an outcome by the end of their exploration in terms of creative development or design development within itself is restrictive. So how, as educators, how can we create a system where both teacher and students are on an exploratory journey and the outcome is determined by the student and the student is leading the outcome? And in terms of documentation and grading, how can we arrive at a transparent documentation and grading, and also a fair documentation and grading for all students? Papa Opong, within his exploratory journey, fuses the print culture, I would say fashion illustration as we know it today, and also his own personality, and all of these clashing at odds, and with the culture that states, especially as a male creative student, that he should either go into law, medicine, or something more academic as deemed by his culture and traditions, is constantly on a journey of discovery and self. Creative pedagogy, as expressed in the sticky curriculum by Oren Shree, I believe has more leeway in terms of giving the students freedom of expression and freedom of exploration. But within this, how does the tutor or lecturer grade the student? How do we grade the student? How do we support the student through this? And how do we map this across the world using the Western education? How do we develop this so that the same grading system appears in London as it would appear in Ghana, as it would appear in Singapore, and that the standard of grading is the same across the board, but then the student is allowed to go on through this sticky curriculum or education, where they are allowed to explore within each model of the curriculum. They are allowed to explore and go through their own path and their own journey, but at the end still achieve the qualification that they so desire or need to move on with their lives. So Orange Tree explore the academic, the personal academic tutor and the technicians. So who within this context of education supports the students? Who is going to support the students through this journey? I mean, the main person in the studio is set up that the students always need and confide and needs guidance from is the tutor. But within the growing numbers of fashion education students, how can we have time to go through this exploratory journey with the student? And does this leave another gap for somebody else to be employed within the lecturer, tutor, or even technician roles for supporting and helping the students through this journey? We can't go the route of personalizing a curriculum and pedagogy for each student, because that there simply isn't enough time or enough resources for that. But how can we create the system or situation where each student has the freedom to explore and arrive at a high level, high standard of exploration and development within their design work? BIGS explores the teaching and enhancement of learning through looking at two different models of learners. So you've got the academic learner like Susan, who will naturally arrive at a high standard of education and a high standard of learning. But then another student will not necessarily go through the same journey, but will need to arrive at the same results or higher at a higher grade. Both journeys are warranted, but both need to arrive at a high standard. So this is the Gucci finalists that has an image of Fabini and Stephen French, who were both from Ghana. And within this Gucci Design Fellowship, Ghana did very well because we got two finalists, the only country to actually have two finalists. And they were given the title Freedom to do a collection and explore and submit and their work. And I feel because they've had the 4 years of support of exploration and finding who they are and what their culture means to them and what their environment and their surroundings is about, that support indeed really spearheaded this title that they were given, and they were able to delve deeper in terms of finding who they are and what their design style and what they want to tell the world. One thing that all the students say is that they have found that their creativity has given them the voice to tell the world their stories and the voice to express themselves. So they're using it as a channel of communication. So from the Ghanaian students' stance, it's not just about the clothes, and it's not just about design, and it's not just about getting the education. They want to tell the world their story, their lives, their heritage, their culture. They feel far too often their story, their heritage, and their culture is told through the eyes of somebody else who cannot relate to what they are going through within the context of their lives. And they feel that their clothes and their designs are telling that story for them. So it's gravely important that we don't underestimate what fashion education can do in terms of developing lives of people, especially in developing countries like Ghana. I've seen it change a community through one student, for instance, who set up her own factory, who now employs over 500 people. And within that's a community that she's changing, and it's not just her life that she's changing. And this is more from us at in Rome at the Gucci finalist. I mean, you have some of the students who have never been out of the country before, and the power of fashion has brought them out of their context, and they can now connect the dots between the Western education and the gap that they found within the Western education, their culture and their traditions, which they try to bring to the Western education. And now they are able to answer some of those questions and bridge the gap. I think that gap is important to be bridged, but at the same time, recognizing that the gap is there is a step forward, and it's something that we can all work towards. That there is really no conclusion. I don't even know why I have another slide for conclusion, because I think this is an ongoing conversation that needs to be had. It's not going to end very soon. But what we can do is recognize that with all of our students coming from a diverse group and diverse backgrounds, that we owe it to them to support them through a contextualized model as much as possible within our pedagogy and curriculum, so that their grading gap is not so wide compared to other westernized educational models. And when we are adopting the westernized educational models, that we recognize that it could be doing a disservice to other nationalities that are on our programs. Thank you.